Welcome, everybody. Hi, I am Sun Psychic Jean. Please welcome my very special guest, Ellen Edmondson. Hi, Ellen. How are you today?
Good. How are you? I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a happy Friday evening in April, and I see that one of our viewers had already left a message. So, Ellen, Ellen has, I don't know, even know how to introduce you. Ellen and I met at a psychic fair just this past March. We were both at a psychic fair, and I was fascinated by the information that you had at your booth, Ellen. And what Ellen does is she coordinates how to help highly intuitive children. And the way that she does this is through her website, Highly Intuitive Kids. Yeah, Highly Intuitive Kids. And we'll show you the website. And as well, she has a Facebook group as well for the parents of highly intuitive kids.
Yes.
So, Ellen, I just want to say hello to a couple of people. I see Miranda is here, and Lark is here, and Janet P is here. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I put all of Ellen's links in the chat there if anybody wants to share them as with us as well. And Lauren is here, so a bunch of people are all filing in.
Oh,
So,
great.
Ellen, tell us a little bit about your overall experience. What happened that brought you to this place?
Of working with, of helping to support the children.
Yes.
Um, well, that goes back to my son. He in 2019. He's the whole basis for why we started the whole highly intuitive kids effort. But in 2019, he was featured on the Psychic Kids show, the reboot that happened, and he was in the premiere episode called "Ghost in the Bed."
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and so we were that kind of started the whole thing. And in 2022, just last year, he was in Inside Edition Digital. They did a little segment on him there. But we were looking for a way. Our son has abilities, and we were looking for a way to help support him. And it came up. The opportunity to be on the show came up, and we were at a place of just trying to figure out where to go, what to do, because there wasn't a lot of resources, there wasn't information out there. We didn't know where to go. That opportunity came up, and we went for it and ended up getting picked for the show. And then we did that. And so that's kind of like in a nutshell how it happened, but there's a lot more to the story. But that's the basis of it, is trying to just find help for our highly intuitive child.
Wow. Wow. And because of the way that you had to, um, find all of the different resources, understanding what to do, what not to do, what he was seeing, who to contact, what to believe, and it was a struggle for you to try and find these resources, and you kind of had to like go in the back door and try and find people that were maybe not as kid oriented, just to find out information for yourself. And this is what inspired you to create your website. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. After we did the show, it was great because the people that the crew, and they had a child psychologist that's there. They give you a lot of support. They helped to identify what our son's abilities were and help us to understand that. We didn't understand the scope of what he was experiencing. He wasn't fully opening up and talking about it. But after we did the show, we were kind of, you know, on our own to like continue forward with trying to figure this out and what to do and how to support him, not knowing where to go. It just pushed me into a deep dive on researching everything and reaching out, talking to people. Where do I get this information? How do I understand this? So it just led me on a whole lot of detailed research. I did a lot of extensive research. And then what happened was my husband and I were talking about it, and it was like, we have all this information, and there's so many other families, because we know there were 15 others just that were on the Psychic Kids show.
Oh,
out
wow.
there, kids across the country that they featured. And there were previous episodes that we found out years ago on the first version of the Psychic Kids show. And we said, the more I researched it, the more I found out that 10 to 15% of the population has this high intuition trait of high intuition. So it wasn't as not prevalent out there as it seemed. Like, it was so
Uh,
rare, and I was like, it's not really that rare. The one thing I realized, everybody has intuition, every single person. It's just that some have it to a heightened degree. We all have it to varying degrees. Some have it to that heightened degree where they can detect the subtle energies and sense and hear and feel and experience all those different things. So, I was like, we need to make this information available to all parents, because we know we felt so alone when we were going through this. And even though I have abilities, and my son and my story kind of intertwine, but although I have abilities, I had a big awakening um, right after I had my son. And it was when he was born. It was about 3.5 months later that I lost my mother. She passed
oh,
away. So I had the highest high of giving birth to my son, and at the same time walking through the most gut wrenching experience of losing my best friend at the same time. But
oh,
with her passing, that pushed me into trying to figure out, what does the afterlife mean? I grew up Catholic. I grew up in religion, and this wasn't something that was embraced or talked about in our home, or that you heard about. So it just pushed me into, what does it mean? What's happening? Where is she okay? Just that whole soul searching, just grief. So I put my hands on every James Van Praagh book that I could find to read. He's a well-known medium. So I read all of his books to help to get me through my grieving process. But as I was doing that and trying to work through that with a young child, I started realizing that different things started happening. My abilities started opening up. But within a 9-day window, and I have to, it's very fascinating, because even when I think back on it, it's fascinating. Within a 9-day window, I went from automatic writing to automatic typing to talking in trance and to light language, speaking in what
wow.
people call speaking in tongues. It was absolutely amazing. I didn't even know what was happening. I didn't have a basis for all of this, because before that happened, I had started meditating to help me with my grief, and Ethan was 2 at the time. And so I had gone to the library, picked up a book to get a different book. I walked by the metaphysical section, and I saw a book on Raymond Buckland's Book of Spirit Communications. Have you heard of that one,
I have
Anne?
not. No.
It was like it just jumped off the shelf at me. It's like I needed to get that. So that one, and there were 2 other books on automatic writing. So I got them, I took them home. And after I got my son down to sleep, I went to open the books and look at them, just feeling led. I just kept feeling led to all of this. And as I read about automatic writing, because I opened that page, my hand just started moving on it. And I was like, I'm not consciously doing that. My hand is just moving. So I went and followed the directions, got pen and paper, and that's when that started. And it happened for about 2 days. And then it went into the automatic typing. I went to check some emails. My hand started flying across the keyboard, superhuman speed. And I'm like energy shooting out of my hands. I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so finally, after this was happening for about 4 days, I was like, I need to tell my husband that something is happening here. I don't know what's going on, but something. And so I explained it to him, and he was like, okay. And so he started watching what was happening. But one night he went out to walk the dog, and he came back. I was typing, I just kind of froze in place, and I could just feel a shift in my throat, my voice box kind of shifting around. And when he came in, a voice just came out of me and started speaking to him, and had this conversation. So I was in a like trance, and that happened. And all of this, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? What's going on? So, he, him being the sweet soul that he is, he's like, well, I kept saying, I don't know, am I going cuckoo berries? What's going on? I don't understand this, because this is not anything I'm ever experienced before. So he's like, no, let me do some research. So he found us an intuitive development class. And when I went to that intuitive development class, and Ethan is he's around 2 years old at this time, 2, 3 years old. The woman, it was a reverend there, and she was beautiful. I sat down, we talked to her, and explained everything that was happening. And she was like, "Oh, sweetie," she goes, "You're not cuckoo berries. You're just gifted. You have these amazing gifts that are meant to be shared with the world." And so she kind of helped set us on a path of understanding that this was just something that was a gift that I had to learn about and embrace and start to understand.
Wow. I knew that your gifts opened up, along the way. I didn't understand that it was right around at that same 2-year-old time. Can you tell us a little bit about, okay, so your son's name is Ethan and your husband's name is John.
Mhm.
And when Ethan, what was the first sign that, so you were going through this while he was still a
Mhm.
toddler, and then you noticed something all around this time. And what was the year? Do you remember?
This was 2012. This was about
Ooh.
2012 when because Ethan was about 2 years old, and so I share all that to say that kind of set a foundation. Like when we started seeing the things in Ethan, he and I were going through this at the same time, and we
Wow.
didn't know what it looked like in a child. We knew we were trying out what was going on with me, but then around the same time, Ethan started talking about when he was two, just turned two. He started talking about past life. And my husband and I looked at each other and it's like, oh, okay. Because one night he was falling asleep, and he would hear a fire truck and he would just get panicked. And he'd start, and we didn't understand why he would get so afraid and he'd get so panicked. Well, he started sharing one night, he settled down and he shared with us that these bad men, now he's two, so he didn't watch TV or anything. So he had no basis for this. These bad men were chasing him and he ran into a building that was on fire. And he said, Mommy, my body died, but I didn't. And he said, and you and Dad were there, but you weren't you and Dad. You were two other people. And he said, after I died, my body died. I went to the nowhere place and I stayed there. And I waited for you and Dad to come to get back together again. You came back as you and Dad. He's like, I waited for you to get together. And he said, you guys took a long time to get together. I waited to be your son. And he was right. My husband and I got married a little older. And he said, I came back to be your son.
Wow.
And we were sitting there like, oh, okay.
Wow. Wow. At 2 years old, he's
Yeah.
telling you these stories. Now, did it happen all in that one night that he gave you this, or was it like over a couple of different nights or a couple of different times that he heard the sirens?
Well, when he would hear the sirens, he would get upset. But that one particular night, when he calmed down and he started talking to us, he opened up and he was, talking baby language, but it's clear enough we could understand everything. And he told us all of that. And so we were just like, we didn't make a big deal of it, but we were just looking at each other like, wow, what do you do with that? So we were just, okay. And we just listened. And so we were starting to notice even more after that, that there were other things popping up with him. And so as I'm dealing with what's happening with me, we're seeing this in him. And it was hard because although I had the abilities and I was dealing with what was happening with me, I hadn't seen this in a child. And what I did realize was I have had this ever since I was a child, but
Oh,
I just kind of pushed it away. Not all that happened in those 9 days, but just I had just into the new things. I knew things about situations or people. I know that in my career, I used it up to that point, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't have a word for it or words for any of this. And so when it all came out, and I never had anything like my son was doing. So it was just very, very fascinating. And he also, at that time, around that time, I shared this story about how one night he was racing upstairs to go to bed. And we were saying, why are you racing to go to bed? Because normally he didn't do that. He said, because grandma, my mom, who had passed away when he was 3.5 months old, he's like, grandma comes to play ball with me.
oh my gosh.
And I was just like, wow, wow. And I was like, I knew my mother was still around, because I could just sense her. And actually, I will share this one other little piece. Even when she passed away, the lights in the house would flicker, the electronic things would go off, his little baby toys would make noises. So I knew she was around, but her presence had gone. But when he had finally, just gone away. But when he said that she came to play ball with him, I was just like, wow, wow. And then it was when he was about 3.5, because my father-in-law died like a year and a half later.
Oh,
That was when we lost like 3 parents in 3.5 years. And
oh my
he
God.
stopped being able to sleep at night. That was because he said grandpa was in his room. And so we just started seeing all these signs.
My gosh. Oh my gosh. It's amazing that everything transpired and orchestrated the way it did. But almost now that you can look back on it, you can see like your mom needed to be on the other side in order to help you to the way that she needed to. Your husband needed to be stable and not going through a spiritual awakening himself in order to take care and steer and figure all this stuff out and support you. And you were going through your awakening and growth and with your son to help each other. I mean, it was just so beautifully orchestrated. What an amazing story. And you live in my neighborhood. You live in the Maryland area, and
Yeah.
I have not heard any of this. I mean, you would I think it happens more to a lot of people in our neighborhood that we see every day that it's just not talked about a lot. Oh my gosh, that
That's
is yeah.
You're absolutely right, it's just not talked about, and that's the whole thing. I'll tell you what really got us to going doing the website and this whole effort was because when after my son was on the show, so we're seeing all of this unfolding for him, and then me, things unfolding. But I had started after a while, started doing readings and started working with people because I was doing it quietly behind the scenes and just trying to get used to my abilities, taking some classes, just trying to figure it out. But my son, when he was about 8 years old, nine, right around the show. He had gotten bullied right before the show. And that's why I was like looking for means to help him. But he would go to school and he would come home and he'd be upset and he'd say, Mom, I was at school and I was trying to tell the other kids that we're multidimensional beings, that we have this existence that's bigger. And I was like, sweetie, I was like, you can't tell other kids that because it's like other kids, I said, they're just going to think you're weird. They don't understand that. It's like there's adults who don't even understand what multidimensional beings mean. I was like, you can talk to Dad and I at home, but don't say that out. And so he was getting frustrated because this was his reality. This is his world. And he can't talk about what he's experiencing because other people think it's weird or it's strange. And so we were trying to protect him in that way and saying, we can talk like this at home, but we don't talk about this out. And one day he came home and he was kind of upset because, he was still being teased about his abilities and that kind of thing. And he said, and I was trying to get him to, I was like, you have to love and accept yourself and accept your abilities. And he looked at me after I'm talking to him like this and he said, Mom, I can't be me until you be you. Stop hiding.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. Words right out of his mouth. And I stopped in that moment and I said, wow. I was like, whoa. I was like, that was just kind of getting a slap in the face from the universe. They were like, you need to. And in that moment, I realized, I said, I have to model for him
Oh,
what he need to be the right parent for him. I have to model, self-love and acceptance. And so it sent me really on a deeper journey of self-discovery and self-acceptance. And really, I knew in that moment I had to embrace this. And I was like, I have to embrace this for him, not only for him, but for all children. Because I realized in that moment, it's like, and I knew people are having these experiences, they're just afraid to talk about it. And so I was like, I'm going to show up with purpose and with passion, and I'm going to use this in a way, and even publicly, because now I'm out and I do this for a profession, and I have to model that for him because he's going to come up and he has these gifts. And I know there's other kids out there, and like the other kids on the show, they need role models and parents need resources and parents need support. And that's why we set it up. We knew those were the key things. If people know they're not alone, if they have resources, and if they have a community. And that's why we set up the website and the Facebook group to start giving people that kind of support.
that's amazing. Wow. So I have a scenario. Um, it's a member of my family. They had a toddler, and the toddler said that the father uh, was had smoke and fire, and that he hurt his chest or his arm or something. And so the mother said to the toddler, "You mean our daddy? Who's daddy?" Because he was saying daddy. And she said, "Whose daddy hurt his arm and had fire?" And he said, "Daddy did. Our daddy, point at, that my daddy." And she said, "No, look, daddy's fine. Daddy's right here. There's nothing wrong." She didn't think anything of it. And maybe, 6 or 8 months later, her husband was in a car accident, and the car did catch on fire. He did get out, but he hurt his arm in the accident, and there was like maybe bandages or something in the area. And so she, you know, you're frantic and taking care of your husband, and she wasn't even thinking about it. And then after the husband came home and everything was okay, it kind of dawned on her. She's like, "Oh my gosh, he said this." And he didn't remember saying it though. Like he's not able to. So what can you tell me a little bit about like why kids sometimes say things but don't remember it, and how you can tell whether or not a kid is going to be carrying this throughout his life, or is there a way to figure that out?
Well, I think for kids, because even like when Ethan said what he said to me, he didn't remember, but young children, they're so connected to their intuitive ability and just to the divine in that way that they can channel. If you listen to them, they can just like, they can easily go in and out of trance and just channel wisdoms very easily. Up until the age of like 7, 8 years old, when they go to school, their very right brain is your intuitive brain, and being connected to that source of intuition and just this divine source. When kids move into the age of going to school is when they become much more logical, and it starts to shut down to a degree. Some kids, that the highly intuitive kids, will stay open. Now they
Mm,
may choose to deny it or not talk about it, or they may shut it down because it's not accepted, or people think they're making it up, or whatever it may be in their environment. But kids naturally do. So it's like almost going into light trance, and they will channel things, and they can pop in and out of it very easily, and not remember that they said those things. Um,
right.
yeah. So it's, and the thing is, if you keep seeing, if you watch, you'll be able to tell the kids that are going to stay open and stay connected to it, because they may say things periodically. There's another example I can use, even just with my son. For the longest time, he used to tell me, he would always say, "Mom, I'm older than you." He's like, "I'm older than you." And I would say, and for a while, I was like, "Okay." He's like, "I'm older than you." Then I realized, I was like, he's tapping into something here. And I finally had to get to, I was like, because sometimes he would challenge me on things and not want to do something. And he's like, "Well, I'm older than you." I said, "You know what? Your soul may be older than mine, but in this lifetime, I'm your mother, and we have to work together on things." So I knew he was talking about something that was of a higher and a bigger nature, but I didn't shut him down. But I realized
Mhm.
he's tapping into something different here. So just listen to your children, and not to dismiss it, but they very easily, they speak wisdoms more than what people may realize, and they may predict things, and they may talk about past life things. They have these wisdoms that, if we let our children just stay connected to that, and be positive about it, give them positive feedback about it, and don't shut them down from it.
Reinforce it, yeah, yeah. Encourage it, reinforce it, set aside time for it, like even reading and storybooks and the imaginative, the place that you go to see all this the pictures in your mind and what happens. And, yeah, it's very beautiful. So what would be just a general kind of, action step for parents who may find that their children are intuitive? What would and encouraging them, but what would be the next step for parents?
The main thing is just not just accepting it as normal. The more you can make it a normal part of your family, and the conversations that you're having, and not shut them down, because they're children that do, it's like, oh, don't talk like that. We don't talk like that in this house, or don't say those kinds of things, or that's just your imaginary friend, or you're making that up. Or when they get dismissed, that's when they do shut it off. But the more you can just give them positive feedback, oh, really? Tell me more. Just you want to embrace that, give them positive feedback, and then also start to establish like a vocabulary for them in the household, because that's
Mm.
a big thing that children and even adults, when you don't have words for it, it becomes scary, or it becomes you don't understand it. But when you can start establishing that in a vocabulary around it, that's helpful for not only the parent and the child, because then they feel comfortable to open up and start talking about it. Um, and don't make an overly big deal of it. If you have a child and they have these abilities, not having them, like, we never push our child to perform or anything, or tell them this or just make it just as commonplace as anything in the household.
Mhm.
And provide them that feedback. And usually kids, you'll notice, will have some kind of they may have some kind of stresses around it, like not being able to sleep at night. That's a lot of children with this heightened abilities have
Now,
trouble
where
sleeping.
does this, where did the change from him being, scared and frightened to knowledgeable and able to control? Was that right around when he was in the Psychic Kids, or was this earlier on with your mentor? Like, when did that change from him being afraid to him being able to control that in the nighttime?
Well, for Ethan, what helped him a lot, because he had started shutting down when he had gotten bullied at school, and when he was being treated like he was different. He always felt different, and so all of that made him shut down. What really helped him was after he was on the show, and they were able to help us identify all the different abilities that he had. It brought him so much comfort, and this is why I say establishing the vocabulary is really important. It gave him so much comfort to know two things: that he wasn't strange or weird, that this was actually, he had these gifts. And so he had words for the gifts now that he was experiencing, mediumship and psychic abilities. He actually had the words for it. He saw there were other kids like him that were on the show. And that's important for kids to know they're not alone. And if you can get groups of children, even just one they're like each other, and they're
Mhm.
out there, they're in the schools, they're out in the neighborhoods, they're out there. If people start talking about it, having people that other children to connect with, that they're like, because they know they can sense another child with the abilities, and they just connect in a different way. um
So I just got a psychic hit that if you know how there's like the band group and the drama group, and now there's going to be the psychic group, you know, the cheerleaders, the psychics, you know, I think that why not? You know, it's just like another character trait. I mean, it's some people are stronger and better at playing band or being in the drama class, and you know, I think it should be just commonplace. Just maybe not make it so strange for everybody.
well, yeah, and and you're bringing up a good point, Gene, because one of the things I also say too, and the reason why what we set up is called highly intuitive kids, and we didn't say psychic, because psychic is one piece of it. When high intuition, it can show up in these kids that are super creative and way advanced in art, and doing artistic abilities. Empaths, because there's artistic or creative intuitives who have advanced artistic abilities. Then you have your empathic intuitives who can read the feelings and emotions of others. And that's a whole different type of a gift as well. You have the psychic abilities that sense the subtle energies in this hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, all of those senses. And then you have the physical prowess, those who are gifted with body and movement, and at a young age, whether it's athletics, whether it's dance, whether it's they intuitively know how to place their body, how to move their body, what to do, and they can have movement that's advanced beyond the years, or kids that have that wisdom, spiritually advanced kids that just know philosophical things. And I always tell people, so intuition, all of those areas are, you can use a high degree of intuition if the kid is very advanced in those different areas. One of the things I always mention is like your child prodigies, those are highly intuitive kids. And because they are sensing and knowing things beyond their years, and they're using their intuition to help them. The difference with a child prodigy is that when it's recognized very young, and you have parents that do recognize that and get them aligned with the right, learning and the right skills, that's when they become known as child prodigies. But all of these kids are prodigies because of these, exceptional talents that they have.
That's just fascinating. And these descriptions and the categories that you're referring to, this can be found on your Highly Intuitive Kids website. Is this where that information can be found?
Yes, there's lots of information out there because it's set up for information for parents, for educators, and for others that may support families and like social advocates, mental health professionals, social workers, any other people that may have a reason to, be of support to a family giving services. Because what the website does is try to open people's minds of, there can be something more. Because quite often the trait of high intuition can be mimic other things. And it can easily get misdiagnosed as ADD, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, um, even, some kids with autism, dyslexia, these things, they have a heightened sense of intuition, but they can get misdiagnosed. And it's just to get people to open their minds about how that this is another trait that is actually out there. And I always give this example that I'll share real quick, because I always think this is important for people to understand. Our highly intuitive kids are intuitive learners. And intuitive learners, yeah, and anyone like you're an intuitive learner, an intuitive thinker. And so for these kids, because we have that with our son, we have to have an ongoing dialogue with the schools about Ethan and how he thinks and processes things. But our intuitive kids, you have your linear thinkers because they're taught A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. But our highly intuitive kids go A, B, C, X, Y, Z, because they can make the intuitive leaps and get to the conclusions of the bigger picture quicker and faster than what kids or thinkers who are more linear what they can do. And so that's why sometimes it's like, oh, well, the child is bored in class, they're off daydreaming, they're not paying attention. Well, because the details, if I've already come to the conclusion, the details can get boring, or I'm just waiting for everybody to catch up to my thinking. And so that's something I always tell parents to pay attention to that. We do have on the website a link for a free Myers-Briggs test.
Oh,
The Myers-Briggs that's a personality test that will help to identify your child's learning style. And if they rank intuitive, that's something, just it gives a little more credibility, because this is something that people don't always understand. If parents have that information kind of in their back pocket, and I say that's for tweens and teens. But there's also a book out there called like Nurturing versus Nature. We'll have to go to the book. I can't remember the exact title, but there's one that you'll see out there that parents can buy in the books and resources section that talks about that, understanding your child's personality type and in learning styles.
oh, I didn't know that you could do that for your child. Would it be okay with you if went through and showed everybody what your website looks like?
Oh, of course, please.
So I did pop up the actual link in the chat there for everybody, but since I can, and I'm pretty good at this, I'm going to go ahead and attach this, share a screen to Ellen's website. So this is her website. It's Highly Intuitive Kids. And right here, you said resources. And here is the Myers-Briggs that she was talking about. I'm not sure if everybody can see that, but that's and holistic techniques. Now, where are those categories that you were describing about the different groups? Is that here on this website? You were saying that there's different groups that they fall in.
Go to the let's see, support. If you drop down, you'll see
Types of intuitives.
intuitives, who these kids are, signs of high intuition, signs of impact. So it gives the yeah, and if you scroll, you'll see the different types listed down below.
Oh,
but it has all those general areas just for people. We wanted parents to be able to have a resource when you're talking to schools, and sometimes people don't understand this. You can point them to this website with all this information, and there are links to different, like the clinics and different PhDs and studies. When you start looking in some of the different sections that parents can educate themselves more about, and then you have that resource that you can point people to, teachers, educators, counselors, advisors. Take a look and just kind of open your minds to the fact that it could be something different. Now, if we always tell people, and Jean, we were talking about this in the beginning, if your child is in distress or maybe acting not their normal selves and they start talking about seeing or hearing things, or you always want to, before you just automatically assume it's an intuitive ability of some kind or mediumship ability, get it checked. And we have those resources listed down on the bottom of the website, where you always want to check with your mental health professional. Or we have some kids, suicide is a real issue. And I'll share a quick story on that. But we have those resources, have them check for that first, rule those out. And then, you can pursue the other, find it, get linked up with a good intuitive, medium person that you can work with your family on that. And we provide that support through our community as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's just brilliant. It's very necessary because it does blend, it does blur the lines, and it's important to clarify what's going on before moving forward. And that the emergency services are at the bottom of every page of this website, which is just really vital. I really love that. And here under support, you have support for parents and for educators. Do you do like seminars in schools for teachers?
Not yet, but that is the goal, because we just launched this effort in April last year. So this month is our 1 year anniversary, and
Oh,
it's just coming up on our 1 year anniversary. And within this time, we've been able to bring in different experts, authors to be talking to the community, talking to parents. We've been doing that. We're getting more services out there. Our goal is to get into the schools more. Right now, we are getting out into the community. You'll see there's a little badge for that you just scroll down past the Illuminate festivals, which Jean.
that's where we met.
That's where we met. Partnered up with Judy, and Judy is now she's helping to sponsor this effort. And so her different festivals that I get to go around to, she's making sure that we have workshops to talk about the signs of a highly intuitive child, how to support them, just so we can start moving this information out into the community. So we're moving to our next phase of things. But I will share, because part of this, and this is a little bit of the story I'd skipped over a little bit, was that when we did get on the Psychic Kids show, it's funny, Jean, because it was actually Judy, the owner of the Illuminate festivals. I was praying for an answer to help our son. And in my inbox, I saw an email about the casting call for the Psychic Kids show. And it was Judy who sent that message out.
Oh my gosh.
And I applied in that moment. I just felt intuitively, I just need to do that, we would find a resource to help us. And from the time I applied, 2 weeks later, they interviewed and did all these things. We were accepted on the show, and then they came out and they filmed like about 2 months after that point. But I reminded Judy of this after we were on the show and we had seen her in Frederick. And I was like, do you know, it was because you sent that email out that we were able to do this. And she's like, I don't even remember sending the email. And then now we've come full circle. She's helping us to get the word out into the local community. So that's our next phase of this, after getting the site up and getting some information out to parents, is to start moving this out more into the communities. And we want to get to do some, speaking into the schools. And I want to do more advocating and guest speaking with folks, because this is important. Just raise awareness.
I think it's the way of the future. I mean, that's going to help all of us, isn't it? There, I saw the inside. Here it is. This is the Inside Edition one. Let me just share that link for everybody. Somebody was asking about Ethan.
Jean, can I just say too, on the website, like where you were pointing about holistic techniques, there are online articles, there's videos, there's books and resources out there there's all kinds of information that parents just take your time and go through it and read, not only the parents, but the educators and other professionals. There's so much information.
So these
Um,
videos here,
those video,
books. Hmm.
Mhm. And
Oh,
then
I see.
yeah,
Oh,
and then
okay.
you can click onto each of those and you'll see different information. We've put information out. Those are all the experts that we've had in this past year. We've had Whitney Burns, who wrote The Sixth Sense of Children. We've had Pat Longo, who's the mentor to the Long Island Medium. She came and she talked about the book, The Gifts Beneath Anxiety. We've talked to Rebecca Fiscal Kramer wrote a book about Let Them Move and talked about how kids with this heightened intuitive ability also have keep so much energy trapped in their bodies and they need extra and they need more movement. Sometimes that's why they can be classified as ADHD, and that's not the case. Once they're able to process the energy, and like schools teach, they can teachers do an incredible job, but the system isn't set up to support the intuitive learner. So once they can process that energy, they can refocus, and kids need more movement. So there's a bunch of videos like you're scrolling down through.
So here's your son here. This is Ethan,
Mhm.
and this was the other
Kendall.
intuitive kid that they had on the psychic kids. So everything is right here. You did an amazing job with this website. You keep going, you keep going, you keep going. And these are I just glanced over just a few of them. Oh my gosh. And you
Click,
have the link.
I was going
Go
to say,
ahead.
click on the helpful, just real quick for the helpful holistic techniques.
Hmm.
Even in there, when you scroll up, you can see like meditation, tapping um,
Oh,
for kids, and there's videos behind all of that. So to get parents started, even teachers, we have some videos that tie to what teachers can do in classrooms, breathing exercises, intuition building, yoga, coping skills. So all of those are things that with these abilities come certain stressors, and we have to give our children self-regulating, self-management tools to help them with processing this energy, understanding it, and working with it. And so we've put videos and everything behind all of that as well.
that is brilliant. Just brilliant. It is absolutely it's just I can't even speak. I don't even know the words for it. It's just so. I mean, now I understand what you were called to do. I mean, this was not just try and uncover what's happening. You needed to put it together for others. It's just brilliant, and I'd like to have you back. I'd like to shout it from the mountaintops because all of us. I wish I knew. Um, I had intuitive and psychic things happen in my life, but nobody ever identified it, and it was just not developed and not encouraged, and and if I wouldn't have had to wait so long, and I'm a late bloomer. I developed my skills later in life, and and just not only that, but discovering your skills. All of these things would be interesting or informative for people and helpful for people who are just now learning their own skills. Some of the definitions and things. There is a huge awakening out there. You and I both know by
Mhm.
these psychic fairs that we go to, everybody that sits in our seat, we're like, wow, the energy that's coming off of you. Like I'm like, there are so many of us out there. Like there's so I can feel it. But and then on the YouTube, it's like thousands and thousands of us.
Yes.
And we all need to connect. But what a beautiful, magnificent, brilliant collection. Can I just touch a little bit on your I think I have this is your um Facebook support for parents.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, somebody texted me, but and this is highly intuitive kids parents community, and this is just a group of parents, and I won't show too much of it because you need to be vetted to get in. But you have different announcements, different Zoom meetings. I think that's just beautiful, absolutely amazing, and you probably have a community of parents that all just need somebody to talk to about this. Well, this happened today, or this person said this to my son. How do I handle that? But this is just a beautiful resource on Facebook, and Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I pointed this out for highly intuitive kids, the parent community, and I do have all of your links
Yeah.
in the show notes below, and I also added the links in the chat above as we started coming on. Just want to say hi, Ron. I have a lot of my friends coming on here, coming in to say hi. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you everybody for being so supportive, and they're all commenting and hanging in there. They're used to having live readings, so I really appreciate everybody coming in and showing your support to Ellen and her cause here, her it's just, I don't even know what to call it.
Well, Jean, I have to say, because this is bigger than me. It was for in what 2021. I started after we were on the show, and I knew I was getting the feeling I needed to do more. For 3 weeks straight, I was getting down. Woke up 3 o'clock in the morning, downloaded with the directions on what to do, with putting together a website and what needed to be on the website, and putting together a parent support group. And as this continues to go, I keep getting it's unfolding, 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 kind of nudged to go in this direction, go in that direction, pairing up with Judy to bring it out to the Illuminate festivals, to the communities. It's just a growing effort, but this is it's bigger than me. This is a spirit guided effort.
Wonderful. Oh my gosh. So Akila is here and she said, "This is amazing." And Akila, do you remember when you came to Bowie and you saw me at the booth? Well, Ellen was right across from me. And I know that yeah, she came, she may have gone to your talk as well. And you do, it's amazing. I think that, more of us, I just think that the opportunities are out there and now is the time. I mean, there is a spiritual awakening. We can't pretend that it's not happening to all of us, and it's so very much needed right now.
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
Wow, amazing. So I also wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about, I thought it was important to describe the boundaries for kids that they use to kind of separate themselves from the period. What would the terminology be? Would it be spirit guides? Would it be the spirit people? What do you call the and you don't say ghosts, but the ones on the other side that reveal themselves, that show themselves to children and are in spirit form? What's the terminology?
Well, and it just depends on what you want to, how I always say people and their belief systems and how they want to explain it to their children, because everyone has this ability. Some people may want to say they're guardian angels, some people may want to say they're spirit guides. I always just say your divine supporters on the other side. But for our son, if he sees, spirits, that's what we talk. We don't say ghosts because to me, just for my personal opinion, I think ghosts just has more of a just because the way it's portrayed, it can be a little fear based in saying
Hmm.
those. But yeah, I just refer to them that way. Your angels, guardian angels, angel spirit guides. But I think people have to say it based off of what their belief system,
Hmm. Hmm.
supports. But they just have to know that they set that they're always in control. They're always in control, and they set the boundaries. And that, just like we were talking about before this, Gene, like if they're feeling uncomfortable with the amount of energy they have around them, if they're sensing or seeing them around, they have control to tell them to leave their space,
Mm.
or to back away, to move, move out of their space. They don't want to see them or interact with them at this time. And the spirit people will honor that. The energies will honor that. The energy is another word I use too for our son. But they have to know that they are always in control of this, and that's part of like the not sleeping at night, is going through parents doing things to let them know, just having some ritual that, even for like the young kids, to let them know that you're in control, and you tell anybody you're seeing or anything that they have to leave your space now. You're going to sleep. Your room is shut off, closed off, and only good energies allowed here. You have to leave your space.
Oh, beautiful. That is just beautiful. That's lovely. I did answer a question online one time, that a woman said that, um, her son kept saying he saw nobody, and she put it in quotations, nobody. And because I think her son was saying, "Who are you?" And whoever it was kept saying nobody. So he said, "Mom, nobody is there. Nobody's in my," like he was calling him nobody. And yeah, so I said, it's definitely somebody. It's not his imagination. And I did explain to her to tell him that he can tell them to go, that it's up to him, and he's the boss there. So that's good to know. That's good to know.
Mm. Can I
Mhm.
just add to what you said? Because you make a very good point, Jean. Because when you're saying that the child was referring to them as nobody, especially depending on the age of the child, it's kind of that's your family vocabulary. So if that's how he understands it as nobody, you can say, start guiding to whatever term you want to use, but to talk to him in his terms. If he's referring to the spirits or the energies as nobody, that's your family vocabulary you start to build.
Wow. Wow. Interesting. Interesting. Just call it what they're calling it,
Because
and
that's
refer
how they
to it.
understand it.
Yes. Oh, so that they understand that you're talking about the same thing.
Right, right.
Um, I don't really have a lot of interruptions at night, but one time as I was waking up early one morning, it was probably like in the 5 o'clock hour, just as the sun was coming up. And that in between state. And I was still had my eyes closed, but I was waking up, and clairaudiently I heard somebody say, "I'm the guy who died last night." And I heard the energy coming from, we have two windows in our bedroom, and it came from the window on, and we actually are on a corner, and it came from the window over here. So I told my husband what I heard, and he's like, he said, uh you know whatever. It was probably you were dreaming or something. So a little while later, a couple weeks later, we saw like two or three houses up the street that was for sale, and they were taking out a lot of trash and had a dumpster out there and stuff. I said, "Honey, I think that's the guy who came to me and told me," because it was like on the same street. And I said, "I think that's who came to me." And I hadn't ever experienced somebody that I didn't know before come to me and tell me without me trying to call them in to get a message, like involuntarily. So that was really really different, but he was very polite and kept his boundaries, and the energy did seem to be coming from outside of the window. Very,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Wow. He knew
Yeah.
you were open and he could communicate with you, and you were a neighbor.
It was, yeah. So that's something I'll never forget. But this is really beautiful. And I also put in the link to the Psychic Kids on Inside Edition. Or your son did an interview. You and your son did an interview on Inside Edition. And is that also on your website?
Yes, both
Okay.
the Psychic Kids and that one are on the website.
Okay. Okay. Good. It's just fascinating, the life that you've led thus far. And do you does your son get regular um, psychic readings? Is he able to be read or be guided like, does he go to a psychic to kind of get an idea of where his future might be, or not yet?
Well, not yet. Like right now, and this is where if people have Highline to do, especially teens, tweens, he's at that stage now. He just turned 13,
Oh,
but they go through cycles where he's very connected to his abilities, and these abilities they never go away. But he's at that stage of trying to fit in. And if you have a teen or tween, you'll see that where they may say, "Oh, my abilities have gone away," or "I don't want to have anything to do with them right now." And that's it's not he doesn't want to have anything. He's trying so hard to fit in at school that he just really is kind of like dialed it way down to turned it off. So he's like, I'm just in that stage right now. But we always tell him it's not going to go away. And when you're ready, we'll start working with it again. So he doesn't go talk to anybody or anything like that at this point. But I know at some point it's going to pop back out. Although it was like, what, last summer of last year, he came to me and he said, Mom, And I haven't said the word tarot around him at all. And I have cards here that I use, oracle cards and all. But he said, Mom, I need to start learning how to do tarot cards. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. Because he brought it up, because we don't push him about this or anything. Kids, you want to let them unfold. We know he has these abilities, but we don't push him out there to use them in any way, because he's got to be ready for it. But he told me, he's like, I said, well, maybe we can start with some 3-card readings. He's like, no, I have to do 5-card readings. I have to do those. And I was like, okay. But I was like, I just listened. I was like, well, that's his internal intuitive clock telling him, let's start working with this. So he kind of went in his phase with that. But kids will go through phases, and they may start and open with certain abilities, but just pay attention that it could change as they get older. And when they are in that teen tween hormonal stage, their abilities can open up a lot more. But that's the point of really talking to them, because they can also shut down more. And they're at that vulnerable hormonal stage. You really want to talk, just be there to support them, because kids can start going into different directions and dealing with different energies if they don't understand what it is and what's happening with it. But yeah, he's not pursuing anything right now. He's just trying to be normal like everybody else.
So I was watching the Inside Edition interview that you had, and it was really beautiful. And one of the most favorite quotes that Ethan said that I wanted to share with everybody, he said he wanted to help people and make the world a better place.
Yes.
And I think this is what he's here to do, and him and many others together collaboratively. And this is, I think it's important for like Ellen and I to be collaborative, and other psychics that we meet at the psychic fair to be collaborative, and to, build a coalition so that everybody understands that this is actually happening to all of us. This is a, we're all here together. We can help each other, and we're here to guide you, but it's up to you. It's just so beautiful. You're such a wealth of knowledge. We've only just brushed across the very tip of what you have. Can I show him a little bit about you, Ellen? I told her I was gonna. Let me just see. Yeah.
Sure.
So Ellen is a psychic, a medium, a writer. I'm sorry. She is a medium, a writer, a spiritual artist, and an intuitive coach. You don't use the word psychic. I know that's my name, but yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you why, especially like even like with what we're doing with the children's stuff, and that's intentional, and it's just because not everybody understands that. And when we're trying to affect change, like with schools and out in the community, people will understand intuitive, and they will shut down when they hear psychic. Not that it's a bad word, it's just there's a lot of misunderstanding around it because people don't understand it. So that's why we use intuitive more.
I think I'm misunderstood too, but that's my name now. But I just wanted to show everybody that Ellen is a beautiful artist and an amazing medium. But you just have to see these. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. These are some of her autographs, and you tell us a little bit about what you do. You get in touch with the soul of your client.
Yes. And actually, what's interesting is I'd heard about autographs and I knew about them a bit. I actually had taken just an intuitive art class, but mine are not like what I was taught. And that's one thing I always know, is that you let spirit lead you to what you're meant to do with it. So I knew the concept, but it was during shutdown with the pandemic. It just came to me, and all I needed was somebody's name. Somebody gave me their name, and I was like, I got somebody's name because I wanted to do this unique art thing and try an autograph. And when I got their name and got quiet, went into trance and started drawing these pictures of of their soul, like past, present, future, and giving information from a soul level on what they're here to do. And when I would do this for people, I did a bunch of them, just to start. I did a few of them free. And every person I sat down with, so I'd do the drawing first, and then I sit down with the person. And every time I sat down with the person, they would say, oh my gosh, this is right on. Like this one with the eyes. It was funny because when I sat down with that woman, she had 3 eyes tattooed on her arm.
Oh my gosh.
And when she saw that, she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And but it was each one of these, the owner was like, it was just confirmations that they were getting of their path, of where they've been, where they're going, what they're meant to do, what they're feeling called to do. So it's like I just go into a trance and go in and be able to, my guides and their guides, and just connect on a soul level and give it artistic reading,
Oh,
like
oh,
a
sorry.
soul reading for
I
people.
clicked on that by accident. Sorry. So, and where is the spirit portrait? May I show
Mhm.
that as well?
Yes.
And it should, it, do you have a,
Just
where
click on
are
the
the,
gallery. We see
this
spirit
one, spirit guide, spirit
or
portrait?
yes. And it should be a little a little thing down there too. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I
So
had,
this is, mhm.
oh no, you go ahead.
Just tell us what we're seeing. Is this their spirit guide or is this their soul?
No, these are departed loved ones. So that was somebody's
Oh,
aunt, and I do demos periodically, and sometimes I'll just be sitting at home, and I'll get an energy that'll come visit me. A spirit will come visit me, and I'll just sketch out their picture. And I have a group called Spirit Portraits by Edmondson, which I'll post the picture there. And so people will say, oh, they join the group, that, oh, that's my aunt, that's my uncle. You never know when somebody's departed loved one is going to show up in a
oh
picture.
my
So like
gosh.
what you're seeing here is like the drawing and then the person
Wow.
that people have identified as being their loved one. And these are just some
Wow.
because I have other pictures that need to go out there too. But that's that one was actually at a Veterans Day fundraiser demo that I did.
Wow.
And
Oh my
drew
gosh, look at
pictures, and
that.
then people came up and showed me the pictures on their phones afterward of like, oh, you drew my relative.
Wow.
Yeah. So I do that
Wow.
without pictures, and then I can do it. People will also can give me a photograph and of a departed loved one, and I tell them, don't give me any information. I don't want to know anything about them. They can just provide me the picture, and then I will draw. Either it'll be a close. It may sometimes it's a close match. Sometimes it may be a little different, depending on how the departed loved one wants to come through. But
Yeah.
I'll draw the picture, and then I get messages that I'll write around the picture and give the person a reading, detailed reading from that.
I
Make it
say
the draw.
the time. Just because your mother lived until 98 years old and she comes to me in her 60s, she wants to show me how cute she used to dress and how much I mean, and that's what I see. And they're like, no, that's not my mom. She died when, but it's not the same. They come to us at their, what the way that they want to present themselves. So it is a little confusing for me. So I'm glad you said that. And then this is a spirit guide, right?
Yes, yes, that's a. These are spirit guides. I did that for a woman, that particular one, and she had 3 guides come through at once. Um, yeah, these are pictures of spirit guides. It's funny because I just posted one in my spirit portraits group today. A woman asked me to do from the Illuminate Festival, asked me to do her spirit guide, and I drew one for her. But yeah, I can get information from spirit guides. So that particular guide, it happens to be one of mine. There,
Oh, that's your spirit guide.
yeah.
So I was wondering if any of the spirit guides resemble the person that they're guiding.
Um, I
Not
haven't,
always.
not always. I haven't always. Sometimes they can be very different. There was one time that I did. It's not on here. I have to update some more of these pictures. But there was a gentleman. I drew his spirit guide, and it was actually a. It was a fairy. Was his spirit guide, and it was funny because when I sat down and talked with him, he was like, I always felt like I had an elemental that was connected with me. And I was like, yeah, this is what came through for you. But it's funny because I had his name. Someone had told me about it. And his name could be interpreted as male or female. So I didn't know if it was male or female. But when we got together and we started talking, and it was a gentleman, and he had this beautiful fairy that came through. But he's like, I feel so connected to nature and gardening and all these things. And he resonated with everything that came through.
Wow, just phenomenal. I mean, can you guys believe Ellen? I mean, I couldn't believe it. She blew me away, and I was directly across from her the entire time. I didn't see her. I saw her husband because she was constantly working with people. And I do have all of her links in the show notes below. And I also put them in the chat. And it is Highly Intuitive Kids is the website for the children, for highly intuitive children. Highly Intuitive Kids Parent Community is her Facebook, and it's just your name, Ellen Edmondson with a D. Uh, is her website for her mediumship and auragraphs. And I mean, I didn't even touch on everything that you do. Just, it's phenomenal and it's so beautiful.
Aw,
I just,
you.
I'm so grateful that I was sitting right across from you, and you have, yeah, I'll tell you later. But
Well,
I was mesmerized by all of your talents. But I do want to be respectful of your time, and we are a little bit over an hour. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story with us and Ethan's story with us. And everybody who's watching, if you want to have Ellen come back again and tell us a little bit more about her skills and her abilities, or talk a little bit more about, specific questions or answer questions for you next time, we'll see what we can do. Just let me know in the chat or in the comments below if you'd like to have her come back again. And yeah, Miranda said that she has a highly intuitive kid, and Akila was there at the show with us. So and yeah, so Akila says yes.
great.
But thank you very much, Ellen, for your time, for your patience with me, for sharing your story, and for doing what you do. And I think that you're going to have a lot of people here supporting you. And it's sort of like a network. We all just want to get together and get a network and get the word out.
Yes, yes, and thank you so much for having me. And I will just give just a little thing here too, is because on that my website, I started with automatic writing, and I posted a lot of writings I had coming through. But I actually 10 years later now have a book. They're all being put in a book plus additional writings that will be coming out later this summer. So I'll be able to tell people when that will be out. But it's all my inspired writings that I've received through the years.
That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I see more coming after that as well. I mean, there's just so much more. What an amazing, beautiful soul that you are, and how generous you are to share your time with all of us. So thank you everybody for watching, and thank you
Thank
again,
you.
Ellen. We'll see everybody soon. Bye bye.
Bye.